Hello everybody, we're here today with a sort of bonus video. We're going to be going over the internal and external events, both of those decks, which were previewed in sort of our two previous videos. And you can think of this as sort of a warm-up to our economy video that is coming soon. So what we have here for you to see is we have the internal deck. We have some example cards that go over what you may run across in the internal deck. Let's start with the first card. All right, right here we have an internal battle. This is a large betrayal, and the player can field up to 11 units. Then the player that drew this, right whenever it's drawn, needs to roll a 6-sided dice. Now the result will get what units he'll be facing. This requires a tier 3 keep, so as long as the player has this keep, he will do what the card says. So if you roll a 1, you're up against 9 units, 1 tier 3, 3 tier 2, and 5 tier 1 units, and so on through the card. The icon at the top is a sword, so that represents that you actually finish resolving this card in the conflict phase. The next card that we have is the internal event healers. Now we have clarified the text a little bit in our most latest version of this card, but this still is accurate. So up at the top, there's the infinity symbol, which just like in all other cases, the infinity symbol means that when these parameters are met, you can use this card when you're involved. So if there's a battle going on and you're not involved, you can't use this card. But if there's a battle involved and you are involved, you can use this card and what it does. So it heals a number of units to full troop strength, and it does say or, so it doesn't do all of these things. It is a selection. So it heals 3 tier 1 units, 2 tier 2 units, or 1 tier 3 unit to full troop strength. Next, we have the combat healers, which work similar to the healers, but with an important distinction. Still has the infinity symbol. It's an internal event combat healers, and it still has the choices that you have here. You still have to be involved in the battle where this could be used. This is where you save units from destruction. Now, when a unit has lost all of its troop strength in the battle, it's set aside, and the damage is recorded on the player that owns that unit. However, the unit isn't completely destroyed until the battle is finished. So you can play this card before the battle's done to save those units that are to the side. Units that are saved are put at 1 troop strength and are reapplied to the owner's army sheet. Next, we have bad supplies. And what bad supplies does is it increases the cost of training troops. Up at the top, we have the down arrow, which indicates it needs to be played immediately. And these are one of the cards that hits the barracks or range, your choice because it's an internal event. And defensive buildings can't block this. So it increases the cost of 1 coin, 1 metal, and 1 wood to the unit. And even if the unit may not have costed any metal, now it does. Next, we have the opposite. We have trained militia, where it actually reduces the cost of the unit. So up here at the top is the sword, meaning this card can be played during the conflict phase. And that means that if you draw it during the draw phase, which that's normally when you would, unless you're 7th Corps, you would have to wait until the conflict phase to use this and the next build phase to benefit from its effect when training troops. Now, with this card and bad supplies, how this works, they don't cancel each other out. They go on the building in question in order. So if the bad supplies happened first, you have to pay the additional cost first. You have to have all those resources right away and pay in full. And then the trained militia would trigger on the next unit you build. They don't cancel each other out and remove each other from the building. Next, we have the internal events that you'll most be running into when drawing, both positive and negative. Here we have a fire brigade. It gets played during the conflict phase, and you can give yourself a coin, or you can remove a negative coin event that's on one of your buildings. Now, these plus coin events are fairly rare in the internal deck, so more than likely you're going to be holding on to them just in case someone else plays a negative coin event on you, or your internal deck is cruel and plays one on you for you. And here is an example of a negative coin event. In this case, fire. It has the arrow up at the top, so then it gets played immediately. Now, this can be blocked by defensive buildings if they are there and if they are capable of defending. It's a -1 coin, and what this will do is it will apply a -1 coin to the building. So if the building has 5 coin for income, as long as this card's in it, the income for every single draw phase is 4. Now, for the internal deck, there are positive events and negative events for every resource type, and there are multiple. So that is what you'll be running into with the internal event deck. So let's move to the external event deck. Here we are with some examples of the external deck. Now, the external deck will have a lot of things similar to the internal deck. However, this deck is what you use to affect other players. Now, there are good things in here and bad things. So pretty much what this deck is used for is if another player is having a hard time and having difficulty keeping up with the rest of the group, you use positive events to help them out. And let's say they're suffering from some sort of negative event. Again, you can use the positive events to try to get them out of that hole. And the reverse is true, that if somebody's getting too far ahead of the rest of the group, you use negative events to try to slow them down. Now, these negative events can be impactful. However, they don't really knock a person completely out of the game. Let's go ahead and start with a positive external event. Now, all of the external events get played during the conflict phase, so they will all have the sword symbol up at the top. Here we have Fresh Crew, and it can either give another player, not yourself, +1 wood, or remove a negative wood event that the person is suffering from. And here is an example of what you would play on somebody that is ahead, more than likely, or sort of your personal rival. This is a negative wood event, the opposite of the Fresh Crew. Here we have an external event that is negative coin. Now, with external events, there are no positive coin external events, so other players can't help each other when those negative event coins hit. So these cards are actually quite powerful. So whenever you draw them, sometimes I've seen players play them right away to have the impact that they're going to have, and I've seen other players try to hoard 2 or 3 to get past the defenses to make sure that these land, because generally speaking, they have a longer impact. Here we have the external event Accident. Now, this is what you play on other players to increase the cost of their units, and this can, in some cases, slow down another player by a turn, which may give you enough time to catch up or force that player to ask for allies in battles. It all depends on when you play this and if you think ahead and strategically. Now, this works exactly like the internal event of the same name, that it increases the cost of a unit. And it can be played on the barracks or the range. Now, again, this cannot be blocked by defensive buildings. Lastly, we have Sickness. And Sickness is another card that is in both decks. Now, Sickness for internal hits you, and Sickness for external you play on other players. Now, unlike the healers, to where you have a choice, all of the parts of this card come into effect. It's played during the conflict phase, and it reduces 1 infantry unit by 6 troop strength, 1 ranged unit by 5 troop strength, and 1 cavalry unit by 2 troop strength. Now, this can be a really heavy hit, particularly if it's played well at the correct time. And it can really force players to look for allies, which in other cases they may have not, which then could spread that favor around. So that's sort of an example of the cards that are in the internal and external events. And these are ways for players to interact with one another, both positively and negatively, while not knocking anyone out of the game and keeping anyone from falling too far behind and not having fun. I hope you had fun learning a little bit more about the game, and really pay attention to our YouTube channel because that economy video is coming soon.